Welcome to Sculpture Vulture. I'm Lucy Branch, a sculptural conservator and author, bringing you a series of interviews with some amazing sculptors who inspire me, and I hope will do the same for you. You can see the photographs accompanying the interview, the episode show notes, and get a free novel from sculpturevulture.co.uk. Hello everyone! I'm just dropping into your podcast feed to give you a little update on what's happening with me and the Sculpture Vulture podcast for Season 2. I'm very glad to report that my latest novel, Restoration Murder, is out now and published. If you enjoyed the series, The Repair Shop, which at least in the UK has been quite popular, it's just like that, only with more murder thrown in. And what a weight off my mind it's been. It's always so fantastic to see something that you have created make it into the world, and it's never what you thought it would be at the outset. I find it goes through its own growing process while you're shaping it, and that's the wondrous part about creation. It's the unexpected journey of discovery that you go on. And I have been experiencing some of that finishing energy that comes when you're at the last stretch of a project. It feels like you're travelling downhill and there's a little bit of ease to it. And I think the podcast has been a beneficiary of that energy, combined with some really valuable feedbacks from so many of my listeners. There were several of you who dropped me a line, and I can't thank you enough, because it means that I'm not just talking into the ether to no one, and it's just great to hear that people are getting something from it. But also I'd particularly like to mention a couple of people. Jill Flett, an aspiring sculptor who took the time to write me a really, really helpful and lovely email, and also Chad Lafever of Lafever Bronze. Now, I'm really sorry, Chad, if I've just murdered your name. It could be Lafever. But if you'd like to check him out on Instagram, Lafever Bronze. He's got a really fantastic page doing some really interesting things. But both took the trouble of getting in contact with me, and we had a really nice chat. So I think the finishing energy plus your helpful comments kind of gave me a really wonderful moment of clarity, and I love those moments in life. They're so few and far between, unfortunately, but when you do get one, you have to really enjoy it. It made me realise that I had a slightly skewed view in my mind of who my audience was. I think I had this person in my head who just enjoyed wandering around sculpture, but what I realised from all of you that have been in touch is that you are mostly creators too, and not just fans of sculpture, but either professional or amateur sculptors, but possibly just working in the field of sculpture. And why would you work in the arena of sculpture unless you had a huge passion, as I do? And this was a really sort of dull moment, because I should have known this, because writers are massive readers. Anyone who writes a book must have read at least 100 to every one that they write, at the very least, I'd say. And so writers are huge consumers of their own medium. And so sculptors would be as well, and those associated with it. So what this made me realise is that I also have got a bit more to offer you in that case, because part of the work that I do professionally, I'm a sculptural conservator and conservator of historic features, means that I deal a lot with people who are sculptors themselves and in the field, and I give my advice and I work with them, so I can't see why that wouldn't be useful to you too. You can even send me questions if you have any, and in between interview episodes I'll be talking about topics like protective coatings and which ones are best and what you should be expecting from them, and how frequently to suggest maintenance to your clients, why a client needs a conservation plan, and what preventive conservation is, and how executing on it can save them a lot of money and angst down the road, and what kinds of things you should expect to happen to your bronze in differing environments, how you minimise the damage, and all that good stuff. That's all very well, I can hear you thinking, but who's coming up in the next season, and when will all this tantalising stuff get started? So I've confirmed a string of fabulous sculptors, including Charlie Langdon, Billy Bond, Peter Newman, Christine Charlesworth, James Butler, David Brewer-Wheel and David William Ellis, and I'm doggedly pursuing a few others which I have in my sights. Just a small note to all you sculptors out there, do put a straightforward email address on your website. My experience of contact forms is that no one ever picks them up. I don't know why, but people are just completely blank when you say you've been trying to get hold of them that way. And if there's no other mode of contacting them on their website, it's just really, really difficult. So the next season will be coming to you in September 2021. And I know that seems like a fair way off, but you've got to remember that this podcast is about me seeking out some of the most incredible sculptors who rock my world, and I'm sure will rock yours too. And so they're totally worth waiting for. I want the next season to be every bit as riddled with stars of the sculpture world as the first season was, and everyone involved, including myself, is super busy, so we just have to be a little bit patient. But in the interim, I'm going to beg a favour of you. Please, can you review the podcast? It really improves our rankings and helps more people find the show. If you haven't got time to do that, just tell people about it. I'm a huge fan of word of mouth, and that would do very nicely. Now for a final fun item. I noticed that there's going to be a 20-foot tall sculpture created to commemorate Leonard Nimoy's legendary hand gesture that helped to make the character of Spock a cult icon in Star Trek. And I'm such a huge fan of Star Trek. But although I'm sure the sculptor David Phillips is a very skilled man, I don't think this will probably be his most stretching project. You're going to be quite limited with what you can do with this brief and how you can portray that. But how great is it to have a symbol in sculpture of such a hopeful catchphrase and in front of the Boston Science Museum, so really standing tall and proud for logic. And I am definitely going to have one of these in my virtual or my imaginary sculpture park. Not everything in sculpture has to be highbrow, and I'm sure you can guess where I'm going with the end of this small trailer for season 2 of Sculpture Vulture podcast. Live long and prosper. If you're looking for a new book, please consider one of my novels about the dark side of the art world, where sculpture is always at the heart of the story. You can get them on the show website, on the usual online retailers, or even better, keep your local library alive, ask for them in there. Thank you for joining me today. Sculpture Vulture has been brought to you by Antique Bronze.